Welcome to SavvyTalks, the podcast that explores the world of earning money online with your host, Kris Dano. Each week, Kris brings you insightful conversations with experts and entrepreneurs from various industries, sharing tips, strategies, and inspiring stories to help you on your online money making journey. From managing your finances to developing a winning mindset, SavvyTalks covers all aspects of building a successful online business. So sit back, relax, and tune in to learn from the best in the business on SavvyTalks with your host, Kris Dano.
Welcome to another episode of the SavvyTalks podcast, where we talk about mindset, money, habits, and motivation. This is actually the second episode of this podcast, and of course, we have another amazing guest for today, and she's gonna be talking more about like how to hire VAs for and the process as well. So our guest is the co-founder of 2XU, a multi-awarded outsourcing company that specializes in switching service-based entrepreneurs from owning a job to owning a business with a highly trained executive assistant who comes with a custom business operating system. She has been working from home since she was 15, published her own book at 18, and became the CEO at 20, and partnered up with her boss to start 2XU Executive Services at 23, and aims to help 10,000 entrepreneurs grow remotely and 1 million Filipinos to work from home. She also has a coaching brand on YouTube where she trains virtual assistants on how to work from home. She is also an international speaker and a content creation monster who has a blog, a YouTube channel, and an upcoming book. So help me welcome our second guest here on SavvyTalks, Lean Lacaba, co-founder of 2XU and a digital content creator. Hi, Leanne. Thank you so much for the time that you allotted for this episode of the SavvyTalks podcast.
Hey, Kris. Very, very happy to be here.
Yes, and I know I have already given the introduction, but I also want our audience to know more about you coming from you. So can you please tell us more about you and what's been happening recently about everything that's from your work, business, and all that?
Yeah, more than happy to. So, as given in the intro, I started all of this when I was 15 years old. I started out as a freelance writer, started getting gigs just because I had a blog that I was maintaining. Got in graphics gigs, video editing gigs, anything under the sun that came with content. I was ready to dive in and to learn about that. And then when I was 18, sadly went through a very PTSD inducing super typhoon in my hometown, where I almost had to pass away, but thankfully I was able to get out of it. And now since then I kind of moved here to Cebu, and I've been here for almost 9-10 years now, which has been fun. So now I run 2XU, which is my virtual assistant agency. I guess also said in the intro, I do a lot of content everywhere, and also just flying around everywhere as well, which is fun.
Yes, absolutely. Like traveling, and I've seen you and I've followed you on different social media accounts, and it's very inspiring, and you put out a lot of great content out there, especially outsourcing. And recently you've also been producing a lot of AI content like prompts. And how do you think that helped you with your system in terms of your business, or the people you help, like the business owners?
So for the AI side of it, when ChatGPT got released in November, I came across it, I think second week of December, which is crazy. Like I said, I've been creating content for most of my life. So what that meant was I knew how valuable my time was, and also how long I spent creating content. I would sometimes take 2 hours to create a blog post sometimes if I'm really stuck. But of course, it can be as fast as 30 minutes. But with ChatGPT, it's helped me a lot with making that process a little bit easier. And also the same thing with our virtual assistants at 2XU. It makes a lot of their work easier. We've created this product called AI Prompt Assistant, where we're releasing different prompts that can be used for email management, calendar management, so on and so forth, the tasks for a virtual assistant. So so it's been fun. It's made things a lot easier.
by easier, do you mean like outsourcing it to a VA, or like creating the system for the client themselves, or both? And how do you find it in a way of like, I know this is new, so how do you get into like the bandwagon immediately after it got like hyped up?
So it's a definitely a mix of both, of like making it easier for the VA to be able to get the work done, and also then building the systems for the client to support them moving forward. So it's not just a one-time thing that they're using ChatGPT. So for how it's kind of developed out, it was something that a lot of people right off the bat got scared of, like, hey, it's AI, it's going to replace all of us, it's going to replace. I'm like, no, it's only going to replace you if you let it, if you not adapt fast enough. And for me, I've always been an early adapter. Um, Very obvious with working from home since I was 15. But it was something that was came naturally to me of like, oh, this is not going to fix next thing. We have to be the ones to master this right off the bat. So then it's going to be so much easier for new clients and new employees that come in to be able to adapt and use ChatGPT.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot of like people being scared, especially when it was released after, which is quite intriguing because there's already a lot of AI tools out there that's been doing almost the same thing, but ChatGPT maybe because it's kind of free. And that's why it's more of like, oh no. And for you, I know you kind of like also integrate it, and you did create like a structure for it that fused for both your client and for the virtual assistant. And how do you think it helped virtual assistant not being replaced by it, but mostly of like using it as a resource to improve and give value more to the client?
Well, you said it perfectly right there of like using it as a resource. That's the main way that they've been using it. So for example, we have in the AI prompt assistant product that we created, we have prompts of like, hey, how can you like putting into ChatGPT if you're struggling to write a draft of an email, asking GPT, hey, can you go ahead and create this draft of email that I need to write? If you're comfortable with it, or write it in a professional way, you can add that into the prompt. So we've kind of made it easy for people to structure prompts in a way. There's even something that we've came up with, which we call the WOW method, which is when you're first introducing yourself to or creating a new thread in ChatGPT. Introduce yourself just like if you're talking to someone. So the WO is like, W is for who are you working for, who is this content you're asking ChatGPT to create for. O is the outcome, like what is it that you're asking its help for, and then A is asking it like, hey, are you ready? And then H is just a bonus, kind of like if you needed something, how. So for example, let's say as a content creator or as a podcaster like yourself, you say, hello ChatGPT, I run I am a podcaster, and we produce a lot of content for people who are interested in money making and building wealth. I need your help when it comes to creating the podcast process, and I need you to become a podcast specialist. Are you ready? I need you to be fast, concise, and quick when it comes to your responses. So then just doing that intro makes it so much easier for ChatGPT to give you the customized feedback versus just the generic feedback that everyone has seen, to be able to utilize it as a tool more rather than it being something that scares you.
Yeah, and since we're talking about like AI already, and I know a lot of people are now using it, how do you filter out um, AI in terms of like accepting applicants? Because I know this is like people are using it, and it could be an email, or this could even when creating their own resume. And how do you find it? Do you find it more of like, oh, this guy knows AI, or more like, oh, or like, how do you kind of react to it, and how do you encourage it, or are you against it? What is your opinion with that?
So since it is fairly new, like it's not yet something that we have on like a list of requirements when we're hiring. It's mostly been just then using AI, related tools to be able to do the hiring process. Like, we do Zapier, which is not a lot of people think that it's an AI, but it is in a way, to connect like from the form to the email to get an auto response responder, for example. And then we can use like tools like Otter to be able to get like the interview. transcription basically, and then use ChatGPT to write a summary for it. So it can be used in a lot of different ways. But as of now, just because it is fairly new and not a lot of people know about it, which is why I've been doing workshops on it. It is for now just like, hey, if you know ChatGPT, that's a bonus for you as you're applying.
And so that's like a really good thing for them. And what do you think is like the margin of it, of like, okay, you're using this too much in a bad side, or okay, you were really creative because you are using this resources available to you online, even when you're applying to me as an agency owner. So how does the reaction comes in like good and bad, you know?
Super good question, because of course, like it could be so easy to just rely on tools like that to be able to
Yeah.
get work. And I guess that's the line. Like if it is that, just 80/20, like if you're using the ChatGPT for 80% of the work, I think that might be the line of like, hey, none of it is original content anymore. But if you're able to have that balance of 20% has come from ChatGPT, but the content came from you, the ideas came from you, because that's kind of the thing that people forget about AI is it still needs humans at this point to give it input. That's why ChatGPT is out for free, because it's literally a beta test software, because they need actual humans to run it and to use it and to see how it interacts. So when it comes to that of like knowing the limit, it's going back to that 80/20 of like how much percentage is it actually you versus how much percentage is it you just relying on ChatGPT to give you the content that you need.
So it's more of like a uniqueness. And do you have like a criteria for it? Like, okay, the uniqueness and the way they present themselves, and more of like if you could give five things to like rate someone, or just like decide on just based on their application form, how would you say it and summarize it in five things?
So first one is originality. Like if they can add parts of their story into it, then we know that hey, it's not just AI generated. So the originality of life has twists and turns. Like for example, just my story. No one else can tell my story because it's different from everyone else's story. So things like that of like little things that like, hey, I'm human. I'm not an AI writing this. And I guess the second one is then how many times they can revise it, because ChatGPT can only revise things so much. But if you are actually human, you can revise it a bajillion times, and again make it sound like you. Because the thing that people forget is when it comes to ChatGPT is don't just accept it as is, make it your own, customize it, and make it make sense for what it is that you're applying for. So, for example, if you're a virtual assistant and you want to use ChatGPT for creating a resume, application letter, for sure do it. But then there is that limit where there's things that ChatGPT just can answer for you or just can't do for you, because then that's where you come in as the human, as the person who has the story or the originator of these stories.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? Like people just kind of get into this fear of something new, and at the same time,
Yeah.
like being odd about it, like okay, this is something new also. So there's like two things, and for you as someone who is also needed to like utilize this, but at the same time you have to be careful because you don't really know of like, is this them or is this a tool talking to me?
Mhm.
And I know this is quite common, especially for introverts applicants who also wants to be a freelancer or who have been working as a freelancer. And how do you kind of differentiate of like it is really them talking? Because then they could be different in the interview. For example, they pass the test, but then they're so
Mhm.
good at writing. Let's just say, for example, they utilize the AI themselves, but they have put so much creativity in it. And then when you talk to them, they're a little bit Kevin, I think you can relate to this because I know you have like an introvert, extrovert kind of part of you. And how would do you handle this kind of applicants or situation?
So it goes back to a little bit what he said of to be able to see if it's actually them or if the AI wrote it out. Is then in the actual like skills test that we send them out, one of the questions there is give us a reflection of this video, and it's a YouTube video. It's called "The Strangest Secret" by Earl Nightingale. But basically, reading that, then we can kind of just discern like, hey, this is person just someone who's going to follow and not really speak up or say anything, or is this person actually like they think for themselves? That's the biggest part, is like when you're human, you think for yourself. That's the biggest trait that we can do as a human. So for filtering those people out, it's kind of with that test, with that simple question like, hey, reflect on this, YouTube video, let us know what you think. If it was an AI or someone else who wasn't really thinking, was just wanted to send out the application through application, then we can easily tell because their answers are going to be very generic. It's going to be this and that. And for the applicants who have succeeded, who've done really well, are those who almost write like an essay reflection out of the video. It's like, oh, this is what happened to my life. This is now how I'm going to, after this, watching this YouTube video, I'm now going to do this moving forward. So it adds more of their depth and their story and how this video is now going to change them moving forward. Versus if it was an AI, of course, it can't do that.
Yeah, and it's amazing because then they also learn something from it because it's themselves who are doing it. And it's kind of amazing how you do both ways because you also are handling, virtual assistants, and at the same time you are communicating this to the client. And for you as an agency owner, how do you give like more reassurance on the clients and that, okay, we created this system, we're hiring this person, she is really creative, she does this or he does this. And I know, especially for first time business owners who just like got their first virtual assistant or wanted to have their first virtual assistant, like how do you make that? I know it's like it's not 100% guaranteed, but there is like a practice to like making them feel assured that this value will definitely be delivered or multiplied.
So it's a twofold thing. So the first part is that's kind of where doing video interviews is still very important. Like for us, like we haven't actually taken that out just because it's important to still have that one-to-one connection to be able to build that relationship, especially if it's a person you've never met in person before. So for our clients, we're able to ensure that with them, like, hey, they go through like 3 video interviews with us before they even get to you. So then the client knows that the E has been kind of really vetted, they've been checked, double checked, triple checked. And then on the other side of it is once that the assistant's actually hired, we have this whole 90-day onboarding process where every single week we check in with the client and the EA to make sure that they're actually working really well. It's not just we hired and manage the EA. Now it's up to you to figure out what to do next. Yeah. But we really take you by the hand, make sure that you guys are working out really well, especially when it comes to like installing the AI tools and systems. Like we make sure that it's customized for them, it makes sense for their business. So I think part of it is just the extra personalization of what it is that we do. So then clients don't feel like, oh, I just worked with another agency, it's not really changing my life or anything.
Yeah, because I've heard a lot of, different feedback from different people. Being in the industry myself, I'm connected to different types of communities where they have different feedback in terms of like how agencies handle them, or like for clients themselves, how agencies also just like let them go and like just figure things out on their own with her or him, and then the VA. And for you, how do you feel like you handle the transparencies in both sides, making them feel assured at the same time, of course, taking care of both your clients and your VAs?
Part of it is just the high touchness of it all. Like for us, like we send the client like the report basically of the hours of the EA, so they see that part of the transparency. For the EA, we have a system where their pod manager, their manager checks in on them once a week at the very least, sometimes twice or thrice depending on what the EA needs. And then for the client, once we have a once a month check-in and then we have an actual scorecard to check like, hey, rate 1 to 5, how has your VA been in taking initiative this month, and so on and so forth. And then we also have their KPI dashboard where we look at like, hey, what are the objectives and key results for the EA this month, so then we can fully support them in making sure that this actually happens. So whenever we're able to do that, we're able to just have that, again, that high touch of, hey, we're taking care of you, we're taking you by the hand. It's not just the EA you're working with the rest of 2XU. So we've kind of just built up that system, so it's a little bit easier for the client and the EA to work together.
Oh, wow. That's really nice and amazing, because then it feels more of like both are welcome and both are somewhere they belong to, which is, we have to be honest, it's not always the same. A lot of people, like agencies out there, aspire to have that, but sometimes it's not executed, but a lot of them are improving at the same time. And for you, we have been doing a lot of this like walkthrough process of like, okay, this is an AI, this is how you hire it, and how virtual assistant can like apply to you. At the same time, this is how you do it with the clients? And for you with the whole system, how do you feel like you get things together, like handle them from, just making sure that nothing is on fire from both sides? Like, do you have a mantra? Do you have like something you practice just to make sure that, okay, this is my check-in this week or this month? Yeah. So where does this come in?
So I guess it starts with whenever we're checking in with people, there's always a thing that we just check. It's like, hey, how are you doing? And do you need help with anything? Those two questions open up so many things. Sometimes when you're stuck, just having someone ask you like, hey, how are you? Like, is there anything that you're stuck with? Is there anything else that you need help with or support with? Those two magical questions usually help us catch or see things that we wouldn't have been able to see, just because it's just a check-in, like, hey, no pressure check-in, how have you been feeling, how are you doing, and do you need help with anything? It's just kind of that feeling for other people of like, hey, okay, I'm taken care of, I'm not being left alone, I'm being here because there's a reason for me to be here. And that goes for both checking in with clients and the EA, because we do have checklists, we do have things that we check on them, but it's nothing if the human itself, the person that we're talking to, doesn't feel good, doesn't feel like, hey, I can do this. So just that human connection of just checking in opens up a lot of things for us beyond just the metrics and the systems and everything else that we have set up.
And with that, do you have things that you felt like you found like a common ground to the clients, and like a situation that you feel like this is quite helpful to people? Like, oh, I find this thing happen often, and I felt like this is what people should do. Or if you were working directly with clients, especially those freelancers out there also who are working directly with their clients.
It's mostly like most of the time the common thing that happens is just a misunderstanding. It's just that of like not seeing the same vision. Like I always tell clients that you have to keep in mind that there's not just the communication boundary, there's also the culture difference. So for example, when I say jeepney, or just the word jeep, like every Filipino knows what that is. It's clear to us in our head. But if you say jeep in the US, it's that big car that goes through like mountain dunes and that. So it's keeping in mind that that will happen a lot, not just as like the word or the imagery, but when you say vision. So when I say like, hey, I want to help a million Filipinos work from home, people are like, hey, how are you doing that? What does that look like for you? Like, oh no, I create content to be able to do it. For some people, they say, oh, are you hiring a million Filipinos? Not that. So being able to take the time to explain your vision, explain the goal, explain it where it is that you guys are going helps a ton, because then it erases any other misconceptions or miscommunication in the future, because you guys are going towards the same goal. So both for clients and for the freelancer or the virtual assistant, it takes effort to be able to do that, to get on the same vision, but it's so worth it because it'll save you a lot of money and a lot of other frustrations if you're able to just get on the same page of where it is that you guys are going.
Yeah, and this is also something that, especially with the culture, in terms of like Filipino culture, we have that like a little bit of a struggle in terms of being proactive, because we have this kind of shyness. And I know I've known a lot of friends who are this. And what is your advice to them, especially of like just being proactive, just like being able to communicate well, like, hey, is this what you mean? Is this what this means? Or like, I meant this way. Are we on the same page? Because I know there's like some struggles with like, oh no, what if they think I'm this? Or what if my client thinks I didn't really get it the first time? And what are the things that you can advise them, or even just like practices that they can practice every day, or like maybe weekly or something?
So that's where kind of the high communication touch helps a lot. Like for our EAs in the first 30, 60, 90 days of their client, we recommend that they have daily check-ins. Could be literally 15 minutes of just like, hey, how are you doing? What's your focus today? What could be possible bottlenecks for you? That helps a lot with being on the same page, because a lot of people and this was sadly something that we had before, is like their EA and them will only talk like twice a month or sometimes even once a month. And because it was that less often, a lot of the things that would happen was like the EA would be working on this one thing, very like would craft the whole project and almost finish it. But the time the client sees it, they're like, this is not what I meant, blah blah blah, I wanted this, I wanted that. So having those quick check-ins help a lot in making sure that you guys are on the same path, on the same bus, on the same outcome going towards, rather than just kind of working independently. Because when you're working with someone, you're building something with someone, you can't work independently because you're building towards something. So just having, again, it doesn't have to be everyday check-ins. I still have daily check-ins with my EA just because it does help me be on track. But for both the client and the virtual assistant, it could be like, hey, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we're meeting up just so we can make sure that we're on track. At the very least once a week, but that's the very, very least. I always recommend at least three times a week, or every day from Monday to Friday. Because again, it keeps you in sync. It keeps you like, hey, we're working on the same thing.
Amazing. And it's really valuable, the things that you're sharing. I feel like people will probably be overwhelmed. We're both like being business owner and being like a freelancer, an aspiring freelancer. And it's been amazing how you walk us through like your hiring process and been sharing a lot of these things. And for one of my last question is that what would you tell your 15-year-old self if you can just like look back to her and just tell her about something?
Very interesting question, and very good question as well. If I was going to talk to 15-year-old Leanne, I would just tell her that I guess I would just give her affirmations of just like, she's amazing. She doesn't have to prove herself to anyone. She's amazing on her own. She's working on it. Because I remember that was the feeling of like, am I worth it? Am I worth doing this? Am I actually a writer? Am I actually, just all of the doubts that of course is normal for a 15-year-old. But if someone came to me and said, no, you're doing great. You're gonna do great. You're gonna do amazing. And of course, she wouldn't believe me the life if I gave her a sneak peek of what the life that I have now. She won't believe me, but at least giving her like, you're gonna do great. You're gonna do amazing. You've got this. Will help a lot already.
And that is very inspiring, especially for someone who is like been doing a lot. And I know you've also been transitioning different types of like from being a freelancer, turning into a CEO, a business owner, and now running your own agency. And for you, with all those process of like you have experience being a freelancer yourself and also a business owner yourself, what advice do you think you want to say to both as someone who have done both?
Really good question on like what would be really good advice. Both the quote that I love, and I made this up. I don't know how old I was then. Is a passion can take you anywhere. And like when you're drawn to something and you're passionate about it, you love doing it, it can take you in so many places. Like I never realized that my passion for writing will get me to the point where I'm running my own agency. But I follow that as a passion, a content creation, now doing YouTube, TikTok, everywhere else. But it led me to this. You never know where it would take you, but it'll take you somewhere as long as you follow the thing that lights you up. That I love using the word of follow the thing that makes your heart glow, because then you'll never really
Yeah.
go wrong. You can just keep going and keep bringing that glow to other people as well. But I know whenever I haven't followed my own passion or my own joy, I burn myself out so fast and I don't want to get up again. But whenever I have followed my joy, the thing that makes my heart glow, it's not always pretty. It doesn't always make my heart glow, but I know that when I get to the other side of it, I'm really proud of what I've built.
Yeah, and I love your wording of like glow because it feels like when you pass it on, it also like passes the glow from one person to another. And yeah, that's beautiful. And how can people reach you if they like, oh, I want to be a freelancer, like I want to start my own VA career, like want to apply if you have openings, and for business owners who are also looking to hire an agency or to hire an agency for their first virtual assistant, where can they find you?
So the best place for both is just my YouTube channel, just because I have content for both sides. I have content for people who want to be virtual assistants, and I have content for people who want to hire their first virtual assistant. And of course, if they're interested in working with us at 2XU, the best place to go is on our website, 2XU.com. Right on the top is a scorecard that will give them a rating of like, hey, are you ready to hire your first virtual assistant? So then that'll be a good gateway for them to see if they're ready or not. So those will be the two best places, is the YouTube channel, which is just my name, and then 2xu.com, 2xyou.com, which is as our scorecard.
Amazing. And you said you have also like workshops. Do you have like any upcoming workshops, especially also for your upcoming book where they could like maybe have a waiting list or any of those?
So we have two ongoing workshops that happens every single month. One is our Beyond Basics virtual assistant workshop for people who are aspiring to be virtual assistants. That happens every third Friday of the month. And then we have a Get Vital workshop, basically, where it teaches a lot of entrepreneurs like how to get vital, how to know what tasks to delegate, how to build systems, so on and so forth, with a virtual assistant, hopefully. So we have both. That one happens every fourth Friday or every last Friday of the month.
Thank you. And thank you so much again for your time and your valuable insights and for helping on this call. Thank you. And yeah, see you when I see you. Bye.
Thanks, Kris. Bye.
That's all for today's episode of Savvy Talks. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and learned something new to help you on your online money-making journey. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you found today's episode helpful, please leave us a review. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time on Savvy Talks.